Welcome, Pewter Report readers and listeners, to a brand new edition of the world famous Pewter Report podcast. No, I'm not John Ledyard. I'm the older, better looking version. No, I'm not Scott Reynolds. I'm the more handsome, older version. Along with us today is the man known as Grizz, the guy who has a lady's first name, our good friend, Mr. Taylor Jenkins. What's up, buddy?
I'm doing well. We are not John. We are not Scott. We are the most handsome, the most hairy, the most Manscaped eligible members of the Pewter Report team here for today's edition of the Pewter Report podcast, and that's always a fun one.
Yeah. We're definitely the looks of the operation. I don't think anybody would argue with that. John and Scott try, but it's not easy being this sexy. And as you mentioned, this hairy. So anyway, I mentioned, you have a woman's first name. Look, the Buccaneers just added a guy who also has a weird first name, Raven. I don't know any man named Raven. Do you? Well, we do now.
I don't know any woman. I know That's So Raven, the famous Disney Channel TV show, but
she was a girl, right?
That was a girl. Yeah, that was a girl.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, anyway,
I've heard the name before, at least.
If you have no idea what we're talking about, we really don't either. But if you don't have any idea what we're talking about, the Buccaneers have added a couple new players today, signed a couple free agents. We've already got a question in the chat saying why. Well, we're going to go over that. Raven Greene, formerly of the Green Bay Packers, and Joe Jones, he played with the Denver Broncos. Those are two guys that we will be discussing in length coming up shortly here on the Pewter Report podcast. We're also going to be breaking down and taking a look at the drafts of the NFC South, the Buccaneers' rival opponents, of course, the Falcons, Panthers, and the Saints. Behind Enemy Lines is up now on pewterreport.com if you want to go check it out. We give our grades. Well, I say I do. I asked for a little bit of input from John since he's kind of the resident draft guru, and he shared his thoughts on a couple things. Look, it's really dumb, Taylor, to give grades at this point. These guys haven't even put on a uniform, right? I mean, if after the draft a few years ago, people would have thought, hey, MJ Stewart, he's a second round guy. He was drafted ahead of Carlton Davis. He's going to be the better cornerback. Wrong. So, again, you just don't know. Jameis Winston, number 1 overall pick. He's going to be the best ever. Wrong. That's the way it goes. You just never know. And I'll be honest. I'll be the first to admit, Tristan Wirfs, while I thought he was going to be good, I don't think anybody expected him to play as well as he did last year. I don't know that Tristan Wirfs expected him to play as well as he did last year. So my point being, grades really mean nothing. They're just for fun. What we need to do is set up a notification to come back 3 years from now to this date, and then we'll tell you how good our grades are and how accurate they are, because it's going to take a few years for us to really know how good this NFC South is going to be with new additions, and, of course, how good the Buccaneers are going to be with their draft haul as well, which Scott and John and I think John and Matt yesterday really discussed all of that in length. We won't get into the Buccaneer draft picks a whole lot, although we will bring up Kyle Trask because Mr. Hater over here, Taylor Jenkins, can't stand Kyle Trask. I mean, you would think he's a Seminole fan. As much hate. I mean, he even wrote a column basically bashing the guy, saying he's probably the worst pick in franchise history. Is that right?
Worst second rounder than Roberto Aguayo, as I've always said.
Oh my
Just
goodness!
Just kidding. Bucs and/or Gator fans. I'm completely kidding. But you know what's a great first round draft pick though, Taylor? Celsius. What are you drinking? A blueberry pomegranate? I finished it just before the pod. Got a blueberry pomegranate heat. Long day. Had to get a little mid-afternoon boost. Ready for this pod. Bring the energy to this pod. I haven't been on in a while. I'm ready for it.
Well, and that's what Celsius does. In case you've not tried Celsius, you need to. Celsius is the best energy drink out there, not just because they're a sponsor here. It's because we've all tried it and we all enjoy it and we all drink it on a regular basis. The great thing about Celsius is it's not loaded with a ton of things that are going to make you crash, particularly sugar, right? And it tastes good. Sometimes you think of things, well, it doesn't have sugar. How can it taste good? This tastes good. Trust me on that. Celsius, one of our proud sponsors here at the Pewter Report podcast. Take a look at this. We'll be back and we will start breaking down the NFC South rivals and talk about the new additions for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. But right now, a quick message from our good friends at Celsius. Taylor, I don't know if you know this. I may look a little sweaty right now. It's because I do that exact workout like right before the show. Everything those guys were doing and the gals included, especially that one where they whip the rope up and down. I have one in the backyard and I do that.
And that's the thing about Celsius is when I go to work out, and I'm just sweaty in general, so that's not why I look sweaty. But when I drink Celsius before I work out, I feel like those people. I don't look like those people, but
you kind of do.
Like it.
You're getting there.
That's true.
You're working towards those goals. That's important. But Celsius, if you want to get energy for a workout, if you just need that pick me up, that boost for when you're just at work and you go to lunch, go to lunch, you come back an hour later, you're sitting at your desk and you're just like, oh my gosh, I'm going to fall asleep at any point right now. That's where Celsius can really help out. And that's why we like Celsius a lot here because they really do help things out. Now you can find Celsius at your local stores. I was at Wawa the other day. I was at Publix. Again, that's in the Tampa Bay area. I saw Celsius. They're at some health food stores, things like that. So go check out Celsius. And you can also purchase it by going to our ads on pewterreport.com. So that's a good place to go do all of those things. So anyways, appreciate Celsius and all they do. Good people, too. It was great having them out at the Mill event a couple weeks ago and got to meet them personally one-on-one. I'd met some of them before at an event we had at Glory Days right before the Super Bowl, but really good people, really good product. Make sure to check out Celsius. You won't be disappointed. Now, Taylor, let's get into the meat. Is it the meat or the teeth? The teeth or the meat? Or the meat teeth of the point of this podcast? Well, there's a couple
it's the
points.
Meat and the potatoes.
Okay. We're going to dig into the meat and potatoes.
And we dig into it with our teeth.
Okay, that's what we're going to do. This. All right, first of all, Raven Greene from the Packers. Now, again, we've already had a question in the comments. I'm going to pull up the questions here. One of them was, why? That was the first question I saw, why? And here's the deal. John, again, as soon as the news broke a little while ago that these two guys had been signed by the Buccaneers, John jumped right on the story. John likes both of these guys, mainly because, he really feels they're going to be and help as a big special teams value to this football team. And when you look at what they've been able to accomplish, now Greene is a ball player, right? He's not just a special teams guy. I mean, he's a guy that's played safety / linebacker, kind of that hybrid kind of guy, like a Deion Buchanan did back in his day with the Arizona Cardinals with Bruce Arians. But he's a guy that can really, I think, help this football team as well. Now, he's got to make the football team. This is a loaded football team. You can't just say, well, the Buccaneers signed me as a free agent, so I'm going to make the football team. They signed a Packers safety last year, right, in free agency. Why can't I think of his name? Nick Harris, somebody? I don't remember his name. He was here so short of a time, I can't even remember who it was. Yeah. Google it, somebody, and tell us who it was because I'm old and I can't remember.
And we didn't get to spend any time around these guys last year, right. So that's another thing that I feel like I'm completely lost. All we got was 15 minutes on the sidelines in a little box.
The point is that they still have to make the football team. The Buccaneers spent day two and three. Drafting a lot of special teams guys, particularly last Saturday. So they really wanted to improve their special teams play. And I think that they did that through the draft somewhat, but also by bringing in these two guys. Now, when you talk special teams and which one of them is a better special teamer, well, obviously Joe Jones from the Broncos is that guy. He is a guy that has just been a special team demon for the Broncos. And I've actually got a couple. I actually got a clip of him here. I'm going to pull this up now and we can look at him. This is him blocking a punt coming in. I was against Baltimore, the Ravens. How ironic is that? But that's Joe Jones right there blocking a punt. And of course, the Broncos end up with the ball on about the 6 or 7 yard line. I'm sure they punched it in behind DeMar Dotson, who was playing at the time. But my point is he's a legit special teamer. Now, when you take a look at Raven Greene, we'll look at his highlights real quick. He's more of a football player, as you can see here in these clips. This is obviously against the Dolphins, and comes in on the blitz off the edge. This particular play gets it deflected. Well, the ball's got thrown up for grabs, and he ends up making the interception there. And again, he's also a special teams guy, too, that can help out. This is another interception that he has here, I believe. Nope, it's a sack. Here we go. Whoops. Where's the ball? Oh, wait. There it is, the fake punt. Like to see that. Teams need to run more fake punts, in my opinion. But those are some of the things that these guys bring to the table. Now, again, they're not big known names, but at the same time, we also know the Buccaneers are up against the salary cap. And let's just face it, there's not a ton of big name guys left out there that could help this football team because they've been signed by other teams or by the Buccaneers themselves in free agency. There's not a ton of guys out there. So you've got to look for these complementary guys. And I think that's what this signing is. Now, again, they both got to make the football team. I think Jones definitely has I think they both have a really good shot of doing that. But I think Jones is a guy that can really be that special team standout. Jack Sitchie was a guy that played well on special teams. Ryan Smith is the guy that played well on special teams. Both those guys are gone. Who's going to be the new special teams guy? Now, the Buccaneers did draft Grant Stewart with the last pick, Mr. Irrelevant. I said it wrong, but he's going to be here. Hopefully he makes the football team. But Bruce Arians is right, and it's something that I think we all harped on. And if you watched the Buccaneers last year, there just wasn't any juice in the special teams. I mean, they did have a blocked punt. Was that Patrick O'Connor that blocked that punt?
Yeah, that was Pat O'Connor against the Broncos. Real early in the first quarter.
Yeah, and then that was pretty much – I'm trying to think of any standout splash special teams plays last year. I don't really remember any. Now, there wasn't –
Mike Edwards had a ball go off his hands running backwards against the Saints in week 1, and that was a big problem.
Yeah, that's
there was a lot more of those. There was a lot more of I think just I don't want to say insignificant, but we're not far removed, even with a bad Bucs team, from them having one of the best special teams units in the league. I remember that was a big thing. Punts down inside the 20, punts down into the 10, inside the 10. A few years ago, before Bruce Arians got here, that was a major plus. And I don't know if you heard it, but John Spytek was on with Carmen and Scott Smith from the Bucs, and they were doing a thing on Twitter yesterday, and he said that it's a major part of the game. Fans don't want to think about that as much, but it is a major part of the game. It's a major phase.
Then why has it been de-emphasized over the last 10 or 15 years here? Now, I'm going to go back to the days of John Gruden,
I don't think it was
when he signed Tim Brown to be a receiver, but also a kick returner. And then he goes to Ike Hilliard. Again, a guy that's not going to take one back to the house. After that, I'm trying to think. You got to go back to Clifton Smith, right, as the last major star on special teams. Before that, Carl the Truth Williams. Going back to the old days, you had Danny Reese, who never fair caught a ball. That's back in the old creamsicle days. You had Bobby Futrell. Then you had Adam Humphries returning kicks most recently, and last year it was Jaden Mickens, and
it was not good. It was not
great.
Good.
I mean, he was
how many times?
But I think he did what they wanted him to do. Just catch the ball and don't screw up.
I don't even think he did that as much as he should have. How many times in the group chat were we just saying during games, just keep the ball in the end zone? Because it wasn't that good when he brought it out. And I think that adding a guy in Darden brings a lot more explosiveness to that. We know he had a lot. He's a really good after the catch guy. He can probably add a bit to their offense in terms of screens and end arounds. Things that I think early in the season wanted Scotty Miller to do. And then once he started doing it, realized, oh, that's why he doesn't do it, because he's faster than he is quick. Darden's a 4.46 guy, which is really good, but in a vacuum. But at 174 pounds, you probably want him to be running legit 4.4 speed. Now, again, his plate speed is extremely fast. He plays extremely quick, big yards after the catch guy, very elusive, and I think he immediately brings an upgrade from Jadon Mickens in the return game. And then you bring in a guy, Joe Jones played 349 snaps on special teams for the Broncos last year. Mm-hmm. He played in every phase of it. And Raven Greene, I think, played about 111 snaps on special teams. He was mostly punt coverage. He was a legit player. He had 324 snaps on defense and ended the season injury or on the injured reserve.
But that's every year for him. That's the problem with him.
That's
really
every year. He's legit a Jack Sitchie replacement. Yeah. Even as far as the injured reserve probably goes based on his history.
Yeah,
but
3 years,
I think
3
you've
injuries.
got a situation where this is a guy that they think can help on special teams. That's all they wanted to do on day 3. They spent 4 picks literally just on special teams. When you pick the guy and you go, who is this? It was 4 special teams. That's all they focused on. You bring in a guy like Joe Jones, who I think will immediately compete with probably KJ Britt for that 4th linebacker spot, and that will probably depend on who was better on special teams.
Right.
And I think if Joe Jones wins that, KJ Britt goes to the practice squad. I know they've said a lot that they like from Grant Stewart, but he is another guy that is kind of an in-betweener as far as size goes. He's just over 6 foot. He's 225. Not coming into the draft, they didn't really know if he was going to be a safety or a linebacker. He's kind of the long shot guy, but they really like, again, what he can do on special teams. And that fourth linebacker spot will probably come down to that exact focus. Which guy is going to be able to play on all 4 phases and do that effectively?
I love Robert Jonas here with a thing in our thing. Mike Morton. Do you have any idea what that means, Taylor?
No, I don't. I can Google Mike Morton.
You probably may not even find anything. He was a guy who actually returned a kick in the preseason for the Buccaneers. No, not him. I think it was 81 in the preseason, returned a kickoff for a touchdown. I remember listening to that on the radio because back then a lot of Buccaneer games weren't sold out, particularly preseason games, so they weren't on TV. It was a home game. He returned a kickoff for a touchdown. Everybody thought he was going to be a special team star. Back then in the late 70s.
He did it for the Bucs?
Yeah, in the 80s. Returners were certainly more sought after and not much of an afterthought as they are now, unfortunately, because of the rules and things like that. And I say unfortunately, that's not fair.
It's a little different than the Mike Morton I found. He was a football player. He played 7 years for Oakland, St. Louis, Green Bay, and Indianapolis as a linebacker in the late 90s, but he is now a dentist.
Yeah,
different Mike Morton, I suppose.
Yeah,
UNC
completely.
Chapel Hill, though.
Yeah, no, different guy, Mike Morton. I think he was a UNLV guy, maybe. I don't remember. But anyway, Jonas, thanks for the shout-out to the old days with the Mike Morton reference. If somebody can tell me what number he wore in the preseason, I will give them an empty can of Celsius as a prize. You have to come pick it up because I don't know that it's legal to mail things like that. Yeah. Anyway, seriously, he was number 1, by the way. Anyway, all right, so enough about special teams. No, let's not say it's enough about special teams. Let's talk a little bit more about it because, as you mentioned, the Buccaneers did spend a good portion of the second half of the draft looking for special teams guys. Matt Matera has a really good story up right now that I read yesterday about KJ Britt, who said he was really blindsided by the selection. He had no idea the Buccaneers were going to take him when they did. And but it was a really good revealing look at his thought process that, he's willing to do whatever if it's special teams. But he's really, because I think he only played in 2 or 3 games last year for Auburn, but he's dying to get back on the football field. And again, you love the guys that love to play the game of football. You can tell just from the interview, even the written word, not even the video, the written word, how passionate this guy is about playing football. And if the only way for him to get on the football field is, and it is because he's not going to outplay Levante David, he's not going to outplay Devin White. So he's going to have to play special teams. And certainly if somebody were to get hurt, maybe he moves up in the rotation then, but you still have Kevin Minter on this football team. But the bottom line is I think that's going to make him even more of a passionate special teams player because he knows he's going to get limited reps and limited opportunities. So that's another guy to keep an eye on during training camp and certainly into the preseason where he's going to have some opportunities to shine, particularly on special teams. So I'm looking through the chat here. Boy, we haven't even mentioned the name Kyle Trask a whole lot, and that seems to be a lot of the conversation here in the chat. We'll get to Kyle in a little bit, but Taylor, let's first kind of take a look at what the NFC South has done. And I know that Matt and John broke that down a little bit on yesterday, is in terms of looking at the NFC and how they did in the draft. But let's get more specific with the teams within the division. And you've got the Falcons here, obviously a no-brainer. You've got to take Kyle Pitts there. You can't take a quarterback there because you've got Matt Ryan on the hook for $4 billion this year and $4 billion next year. I may be a little off of my math there, but it's a lot of money that they owe him. So getting rid and replacing Matt Ryan just wasn't going to be the case. And I tell you something Arthur Smith said, for people who think this is a rebuild mode, if the owner of Arthur Blank thinks that that he hired the wrong guy, I like that. I like that passion. I mean, listen, hey, knock, 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 Arthur. It is the rebuild mode because you have an awful defense and you won 4 football games last year. It's going to take a while. You've got to rebuild that offensive line. You've got to find somebody to rush the passer. You've got to find some guys in the secondary to kind of cover a little bit. So you're not going to jump up into the Buccaneer League or realm anytime soon. So it is a rebuild mode. But I like the passion that he has, saying they hired the wrong guy if they're looking for a guy to rebuild. We want to win, and we want to win now. So drafting Kyle Pitts was just a no-brainer. Now, you, Taylor, wrote an article this weekend as well about how the Buccaneers are going to try and defend Kyle Pitts. And let me just start by saying this, and then I'll let you talk about your article a little bit. For people who think Kyle Pitts is just a tight end, and I literally had people on my timeline and Twitter on Thursday say, yeah, it's no big deal. He's only a tight end. They didn't watch much Kyle Pitts. Kyle Pitts was the best non-quarterback. Maybe it may come down. He may end up being the best player in this draft, but certainly the best, most athletic non-quarterback in this draft this year. And the Falcons got him at number 4, and that just gives them just another weapon. Even if, and I don't think they're trading Julio Jones, but if they did find a way to trade Julio Jones, they're still loaded across the board, with options for Matt Ryan, who's still a hell of a quarterback. I know people beat him up quite a bit, and he choked away the Super Bowl. He didn't choke away the Super Bowl. I blame that more on the coaching staff in that game. But anyway, he takes a little bit of flack, a little too much blame sometimes. But he's a very good quarterback, getting up there in age. But giving him Kyle Pitts is going to make that offense even more deadly. I just want to know, and I read your article, but I want you to tell people, in case they haven't read the article, how in the world do you defend a guy like Kyle Pitts? Because he's a mismatch against any linebacker, and he's a mismatch against safeties, and he can go out and muscle quarterbacks for balls. So what are you going to do to slow down Kyle Pitts?
Yeah, I mean, I said one of the things I included in there was never miss church on Sundays before football games, because it's just going to be an absolute problem to try and stop him. And I know a lot of people were saying the same things. Like, I posted, they go easy, Levante David and Devin White. Well, one, Devin White was not very good in coverage last year. He just wasn't. He finished the season much better, but he was not very good in coverage, and he's not going on in man coverage on anyone but running backs. Now, from a physical standpoint, he would probably be the best guy that you would like to line up against him, just as far as size, as far as strength, as far as 4.4 speed at the linebacker position. But I just don't think that he has the ability, unless he takes a massive step forward, to cover Kyle Pitts. Now, in that article, you look at Kyle Pitts is 6'6", 244 pounds. He ran a legit 4.40-yard dash. He is a consistent man beater. He finished last season with a 96.1 receiving grade from Pro Football Focus. He had 3.26 yards per route run, 4.91 yards per route run against man coverage. That was the third best mark in the nation across the board. Any receiver, period. And that's 2 more yards full, better than the next best tight end. This dude would have been a top 10 pick if he was not a tight end and he was just a wide receiver. Now, he's not like Jimmy Graham in the fact that he's like, okay, you just can't put him to block. Jimmy Graham was a guy that was basically a wide receiver at the tight end position. He was a complete liability when you asked him to do anything as far as inline blocking. Kyle Pitts can improve in that, but he's not George Kittle. But he's not Jimmy Graham. I think he puts a lot of effort into it, and that's a major thing at the position. It's want to when you want to block, but he's just an absolute freak, especially if you're dealing with 3 wide receivers on the field. I know Arthur Smith is going to want to run a lot of 12 personnel. They're going to have Hayden Hurst out there as well. But when you get into a situation where you've got Julio Jones, that's probably going to be taken by Carlton Davis. You've got Calvin Ridley. Jamel Dean has followed him a lot. You've got Russell Gage in the slot, and all of a sudden now you have to figure out, what do we do with Kyle Pitts? And I think a lot of that work is probably going to go to Levante David, but you're going to have guys like Antoine Winfield shading over the top. You're probably going to have a cornerback bracketing him. You might not have the ability to run as much man coverage as you want, just because they have so many men who can dominate man coverage. And it was an interesting pick for Atlanta. I'm not sure he's exactly the ideal pick they wanted to make. I think they would probably want to attack defense there. But like you said, they got the best non-quarterback player in the draft. And if you look at any analyst, if you were to pick a guy who you said in 10 years, who's the guy that's probably going to be the closest to being on his way to a Hall of Fame career in this draft, it's going to be Kyle Pitts. And that's just because he's so good at beating man coverage. He's such a physical force. He's such a good receiver. And I think that you're going to have Sean Murphy-Bunting covering him a lot. I think you're going to have Levante David trying to. I mean, that's what you brought S&B in to do. He hasn't dealt super well with the fast guys, as we talked to John about. Short, fast, quick. He hasn't done as well about that, but he is physical. He is long. He is fast. And it's just going to be an absolute problem for Todd Bowles in this defense to try and deal with, because you already have so many weapons, and then you add like a lot of people said, it takes a unicorn to stop a unicorn. I think that's what Dan Mullen said, and that's really what Kyle Pitts is. He's a unicorn. You just do not see guys like that, and I think he absolutely has a skill set to soon be in that upper echelon of Travis Kelce, George Kittle, Darren Waller. He'll just an absolutely elite athlete.
He'll be better. He'll be better. Here's how you stop him. You want to know how you stop him, Taylor? It's real simple. You sack Matt Ryan a whole lot, because if Matt Ryan has an opportunity to stand back in the pocket with the weapons on this team, they're going to find Kyle Pitts, or they're going to find Calvin Ridley, or they're going to find Hayden Hurst, or they're going to find Julio Jones if he's on this football team. I mean, you've got to put pressure. Again, Patrick Mahomes had a ton of weapons out there, but they weren't overly effective in that Super Bowl because he was running for his life. I mean, you've got to figure out a way. And I think that's where the X's and O's and where I feel comfortable with Todd Bowles being able to come up with a game plan. But part of that huge game plan is to pressure and get in the face of Matt Ryan and make him throw the ball sooner than he wants to. You're not going to stop Kyle Pitts from his touches and his catches, I don't think. I mean, he's going to, if the ball gets there, if he has time, if he gets in his route, he's going to be open and he's going to be able to make catches. But at the same time, I'm not going to be one of those people that says he's just a tight end, because he's not. He's a unique tight end, as you said, a unicorn. But at the same time, I mean, there have been plenty of great tight ends in the league. You don't normally win Super Bowls because you have a great tight end, and it helps. Let's not be crazy here. It certainly helps, but there haven't been a ton of Super Bowl MVPs that were tight ends. I think you have to. I say you have to go back. I have no idea. I'm going to go all the way back to I think the Colts first. The Colts Super Bowl win in like 1969. I think John Mackey or somebody like that was like the MVP of the Super Bowl. Again, it just doesn't happen a lot. I mean, we can look at games where Greg Olsen went for over 110, 15, 20 yards against the Buccaneers, and yet the Buccaneers still won. Again, if that's your, if Kyle Pitts gets 100 yards, that doesn't mean he's automatically going to, the means the Falcons are going to win, because it may be shootouts. It may very well
be a race to 35 for the Falcons next year. It's just going to be a lot like it was this year. Their defense did get a lot better in the second half of the year, but it could very well be a race to 35 a lot of times with them, and adding Kyle Pitts to that offense that they already have. I can see them winning a handful of those races.
Yeah, you look at some of the other draft picks they had. Now to upgrade their secondary, they went with UCF's Richie Grant, which I know you hate him because he's from USF. I mean UCF, not USF. But
please.
It was a little bit of a reach there. I mean, not a huge reach, but when you look at the consensus draft board, there were some guys. There was at least one other safety that was ranked higher at the point when they took him, but for whatever reason, they felt he was their guy. Look. The Buccaneers drafted Joe Tryon with his 32nd pick, and he was like number 44 on the consensus board. So teams are going to pick the guys that they want, they feel comfortable with, they think they fit into the scheme the right way. Maybe they like the guy's personality, their passion, their attitude, whatever it was. Maybe the interviews went better than with some of the other safeties for whatever reason. But he's certainly going to be a starter because the Falcons got rid of a lot of their secondary guys. I mean, they were up against the salary cap, not as bad as the Saints, but pretty bad. So they got rid of some guys. They had some injuries there last year. So Richie Grant is a guy that will, other than injury, I don't think there's any way that this guy isn't starting in the secondary. You go on down the list, Michigan's offensive lineman, Jalen Mayfield. Again, an important part of what they need to do. They understand the importance of protecting Matt Ryan. You've got to keep this guy upright. He's not a guy. He's like Tom Brady. He's like some of these other statues in the pocket. You've got to be able to protect him. And so they added Jalen Mayfield that will be competing for a spot on the offensive line. They went with San Diego's cornerback, Darren Hall, in the 4th round. Then also in the 4th round, they went back to the offensive line with Drew Dahlman. Another guy, probably a little bit of a reach just based on the consensus board at the time that he was picked, but really a perfect fit because Arthur Smith runs a lot of zone in their run game, and Dahlman is certainly, that's what he's cut out for. I mean, he would not have been good in a power-based man-on-man type blocking situation. He's a touch undersized, right around 300 pounds. I think a little less than 300 pounds, but he's really athletic. He gets out, he gets to the second level. He can pull but he's the guy that really fits what they want to do. Now, again, him getting acclimated, becoming the guy that Matt Ryan sticks his hand under every single snap of the game. We'll see how that works. But they lost Alex Mack in free agency, so they needed a center. So I think that was probably a pretty good move there. After that, it's all just a crapshoot, honestly. I mean, the whole draft is essentially after you get out of the first or second round. Texas defensive tackle Taquan Graham. Notre Dame defensive end, and I'm not going to pronounce it because I'll screw it up. I practiced it earlier, but I'm not even going to try. Avery Williams is a guy that's real interesting because the Falcons brought him in. I think they think he can develop possibly to a nickel cornerback. I mean, he was decent at Boise State in that role, but what he was really effective at, Taylor, was returning kicks. I think he had 9 return scores. Now, the interesting thing about this pick to me, though, is the Falcons, I believe, are the ones that signed Cordell Patterson from the Bears, who used to play for the Vikings, who's a hell of a kick returner, one of the best in the league. So we'll see how that battle shapes up. Who's going to be what? Maybe Patterson's the kickoff guy and Avery Williams is the punt return guy. We'll see.
I just kind of like what Atlanta did as far as they were kind of in a spot where they could not trade out of 4. I know those reports came out that they were fielding calls for the number 4 pick and fielding calls to trade down, but that to me felt like a report that they put out.
Yeah.
By saying, "Oh, we're fielding calls for the 4th pick," it really meant, "Please call us for the 4th pick because we want to get more picks." But when you look at the top 2 quarterbacks being gone at 2, and San Francisco was trading up to 3 for their quarterback of choice. But then after that, the Bengals weren't taking a quarterback. The Dolphins weren't taking a quarterback. The Lions probably weren't taking a quarterback. You didn't really have to, if you wanted to be that next team to take QB4, trade up until maybe 7, maybe 8, maybe 9.
Right.
So they really couldn't get rid of it. And when you look at a situation where even the best drafters, it's still a big roll of the dice. The best drafters in the league are hitting on about 50% of their draft picks. So then once you get that unicorn and pitch, you just go, okay, we're stuck at 4. We're going to take the best, maybe the best player in this draft. They attacked everything they needed to attack. They went after their secondary with a safety in the second.
But they're not going to do it all in 1 year.
They're still a ways away.
I think they still are. Again, I think they can put up a lot of points. I think they'll be dangerous offensively, but it's going to take a while. Number one, it's a new scheme, right, on both sides of the football, and new coaching staff in there. So it's going to take a little while to get acclimated there. But I think it was a good hire. I think Smith's good, and Terry Fontenot as the GM, I think, was a really big get for them as well, replacing Thomas Dimitroff. Now let's take a look at the Panthers. To me, this I actually gave them the best grade of all the NFC South teams, including the Buccaneers. I think they really filled some holes, and I think they really got better as a football team. The one question mark I have is them passing on Justin Fields. And I wrote in today's Behind Enemy Lines, that decision, Taylor, by Matt Rule and their new GM, who slipped the top, I can't think off the top of my head right now, but their new GM made this decision. This is the decision by not drafting Justin Fields, which either makes you a Hall of Fame coach or gets you fired in 2 years. And I say that because, I mean, they're putting all of their eggs in the Sam Darnold basket. And as highly rated as Sam Darnold was just, 3 years ago, he just hasn't shown a whole lot. And that's the reason he was available for, a cup of coffee from the New York Jets, who wanted to upgrade and went with Zach Wilson. We'll see what Matt Rule does. Now, the wild card or the caveat in all that is Joe Brady, the offensive coordinator. This guy is an offensive guru, right? I mean, the success that he had, in college, certainly with what he did at LSU, some of the other stops he's had.
Spent a lot of time with
coaching.
the Saints, a couple years with the Saints under Sean Payton, I think. So
he's a very smart, intelligent guy, and here's the deal though: they don't have any idea what they have in Sam Darnold other than the film that they have of Sam Darnold. They haven't seen him on the field yet. They have no idea, a whole lot about this guy other than what they've heard and what they've been able to gather in their scouting process. People say this all the time. Why did the Buccaneers bother bringing in so-and-so for a visit? This is a perfect example right here, Taylor. Again, nobody would have thought the Panthers would have Sam Darnold on their team 2 years ago, yet here he is.
Yeah.
And again, you interview him, you go through the process to find out in case somehow, some way, that player is available via trade or because he ends up getting cut or he's a free agent or whatever it is. But bottom line is they don't have any idea what they have. Now, at the same time, playing devil's advocate or glass half full or whatever you want to call it, Taylor, they don't know what they would have had in Justin Fields either, right? I mean, he is what he is. You saw what he was at Ohio State, but you don't ever really know how that's going to transition to the NFL. So it doesn't necessarily mean that they made a mistake. It's just going to be one of those wait and see in a few years. And maybe both these guys are successful. Maybe Sam Darnold turns out to be a Pro Bowl quarterback down the road. And maybe Justin Fields does as well. Me personally, I would have 1,000% went with Fields. You've already got Darnold on the roster. Let him battle it out. May the best man win. And worst case scenario, you got one hell of a number 2 quarterback on your football team.
Both of them are on rookie contracts. It's not like one of them is being paid $40 million a year like it would have been in Atlanta.
Exactly.
Or carries 43 million in dead cap like you've got with Kirk Cousins or Matt Ryan. Worst case scenario, you've got 2 quarterbacks on rookie contracts. One of them only 2 years left for Darnold. I think did they pick? I don't know.
They did pick up his 5th year. Yeah.
So 2 more years with him, and then you figure out what you got.
I think a potential steal in this draft is Terrence Marshall Jr., the LSU wide receiver they picked up in the 2nd round.
Yeah.
You got to give Darnold some weapons. He didn't have a whole now. Again, it's really hard to judge Sam Darnold because the Jets are just a dumpster fire of a franchise, or they were. We'll see what happens this year. They got rid of Adam Gase, which was just probably the worst pick. Just think about this. You got rid of Todd Bowles to hire Adam Gase. That's all you need to know about. And again, I understand Todd Bowles didn't have a ton of success there either, but the bottom line is at the end of the day, I think you'd have been better off with Todd Bowles. You'd have had a better defense, at least, certainly in New York, than you've had the last couple of years.
And now you're going to see just how bad Adam Gase is, because we saw him really significantly underperform in Miami. And as soon as Ryan Tannehill left and got into a better position,
yes,
I mean, just legitimately turned into. I mean, I know it's a little.
And maybe that's exactly what. Maybe that's exactly what Matt Rule's thinking.
Maybe that's the best thing that Sam Darnold that has ever happened to Sam Darnold in his professional career is getting away from Adam Gase and getting. And now you see, okay, this guy was worthy of a top 5 pick. And it's not like this is all we've seen. We've seen the upside. We've seen the flashes. Now we're going to try and get him out of a bad situation with a bad roster and bad weapons and a bad head coach. And we're going to put him somewhere where, I mean, and I think they really knocked it out of the park at the beginning of this draft. I think Tommy Trimble's a little weird one, but again, it's a 3rd round pick. He's a big physical guy. You get a backup running back, I think, that's really talented in Chuba Hubbard. Round 5, Davion Nixon.
Not Chuba
Hubbard.
Chuba.
Sorry. I'm thinking of what's his name?
Hubba Bubba.
I can't remember who I'm thinking of. But Davion Nixon, really good value at DT, and it's just in the 5th round. Terrence Marshall had a little medical history, but could have probably gone in the 1st round.
Sure.
If it wasn't for that, so really good draft from the Panthers, and I think just like the Jets, this could be a potential. I mean, franchise revolutionizing draft when you bring in so many pieces, and like I said, 50-50 hit rate, even with a good drafter. They traded, they just have a ton of draft picks. Throw your darts at the wall, get guys you like, get athleticism late.
I mean, they took 11 guys in this draft. I mean, they ended up with 11 players, and like you say, if half of them pan out and become decent football players, that's pretty good success rate, and that's going to help this football team. Because again, they still, I don't know why I just said it again, because Scott used to always get on me because I always said and again, so I'm going to try not to say that the rest of the show, but I probably will. My point is that I have to say again because it just feels so natural, but I'm not going to say it. So I just said it. So anyway, again, my point is that they drafted a lot of guys. They're not a very good football team. 5-11 is 5-11 last year. And so there's a chance for a lot of these guys to make the football team. When you look at the Buccaneers, you certainly hope that, your guys make the football team, but there's just not a lot of open spots available for players on really, really good football teams. When you're 5-11, everything's wide open. I mean, there's a handful of guys that are guaranteed spots and things like that. But second year with a coach, he's trying to change the culture. He's going to bring as many players and new faces in as he can and let them battle it out in competition. Breeds the best in a lot of cases, and the cream of the crop rises. And I just used 3 cliches in one sentence. Give me a medal for that. But I think the Chuba Hubbard pick is good. I mean, they lost Mike Davis to the Falcons. He was their backup running back, who, thank goodness, I guess they had him, because they probably don't win 5 games without him, because McCaffrey missed 13 games last year due to injury. Now, hopefully he's 100% for the Panthers' sake this year, and Chuba Hubbard isn't called on to be the Mike Davis role this year. But if he is, I think he'll be okay. He's certainly not Christian McCaffrey. He's got some limitations, but I thought that was a good pick in the 4th round as well. You look down the rest of the list, some of these other guys: Washington cornerback Keith Taylor, Deontay Brown, Shi Smith from South Carolina, Thomas Fletcher, and Phil Hoskins. I'm not even going to pretend to say I know anything about these guys, so I'm not even gonna fake it. But bottom line is they can add some talent, and if some of these guys work out, then it's going to be good for the Panthers, who I had them ranked as the top in the NFC South in terms of the draft, just ahead of the Falcons a little bit. And that brings us to the Saints.
Chuba Purdy, by the way, your guy, you go. Florida State. That's what I was thinking of. That's where the Chuba came from.
Chuba Purdy, yeah. All right, the Saints. Now this was a little strange to me. They went with Peyton Turner in the 1st round. Again, wasn't, in my opinion, their biggest need. Now, I think he's a talented football player. I think that he can certainly help the Saints, but it's going to be on a rotational basis. He's not going to step in and be the number 1 guy. I don't believe. I think they've got guys in front of him that are going to play. They signed a guy from Kansas City, and they lost. I'm drawing a blank. Anyway, a defensive end or an outside linebacker. Trey Hendrickson, that's what I was trying to think of. Guy that Donovan Smith doesn't want to see anymore. They lost him in free agency, but they made a trade, made a trade. I think they signed somebody from Kansas City or somebody else, but not really a big number guy. I think that guy had 2 sacks last year. Peyton Turner is going to be a rotational football player. A little surprising in the 1st round, but here's the problem with the Saints and where they were drafting at such an odd position. We talk about the Buccaneers being in a bad position to draft. I mean, when you look at your need guys, and they needed linebacker, they needed cornerback. The best guys were off the board at that time. I mean, the star guys, the guys that would step in and be, potential Pro Bowlers in the next 2 or 3 years, were gone when the Saints drafted. I think they drafted number 28. So, they had to kind of settle a little bit. They got Pete Werner. He's a Ohio State linebacker. He had one hell of a pro day, man. He didn't look like he did on film, and he was fine on film. I mean, he started 35 games for Ohio State, right? He's a good linebacker. I don't think there's any question about that. But Werner was a guy that when I was doing some research on the draft, some of the critical things about him was, he was a little tight. He didn't play as athletic as his pro day was. But at the same time, they lost Alex Anzalone. He went to Detroit, followed Dan Campbell to Detroit. So he's going to be up there. So they needed a linebacker. And I don't think I think, again, barring injury, Pete Werner is the guy that's going to be playing next to Demario Davis in that Saints defense starting this year.
And they did attack all needs. I thought they were definitely going to attack cornerback sooner than they did. But like you said, major losses at all 3 positions, and those are the first 3 places they go in the draft. And then quarterback Ian Book. If we're going to take any look at what Bucs fans are saying about Kyle Trask being the next Tom Brady, Ian Book has got to be the next Drew Brees, right?
Head scratcher, man. At number 4, I mean, in the 4th round, to me, that was one of the more puzzling picks to me. Again, you've got Jameis Winston, you got Taysom Hill, you got Trevor Siemian on the roster. I don't know of anything that Ian Book does great. He was steady. He was good. He was a really good leader. I don't think there was any question about that. Team captain at Notre Dame, tough guy. But what does he do great? And I did the draft previews this year for quarterbacks in particular, and they're just, most of the draft services and the different scouts and things like that I read and did research on, had him as a day 3 guy, but later on in the draft. and as a backup at best. I mean, that's where they foresee him being, in the league. And so you wonder to yourself if drafting a career backup in the 4th round makes a lot of sense. And to me, it doesn't. Again, who am I to question Sean Payton, right? The guy knows a little bit about quarterbacks, but to me, for a guy that doesn't help your football team, you needed wide receiver help. You needed more receivers. You could have used some other guys in other positions on the football team. To me, it just seems like a wasted pick right there.
Yeah, to go out and spend a 4th pick. I know a 4th round pick isn't necessarily what you would call high draft capital, but again, so you're basically saying, I mean, you assume Jameis Winston or Taysom Hill will be gone soon. How long is Taysom Hill still under contract? He's got the void years now, so he might only be 1 or 2 more years. But it just is an absolutely head scratch because you assume he's not going to be the quarterback of your future.
Right.
I mean, just because of who Ian Book is as a prospect and where you're drafting him, you're assuming he's not going to be the guy of the future. But I mean, the Bucs have drafted. I mean, you could potentially land a Jordan Whitehead in the 4th round. So why at that point you're drafting for athleticism, you're drafting for upside, and like you said, why go and get a guy that you just don't think is going to be a part of your future in any fashion, really more than a Blaine Gabbert or a Ryan Griffin would be?
Maybe Sean Payton just doesn't like Jameis Winston. Maybe he just doesn't think he's going to be the guy. I don't know. That's the first thought I had was maybe there's not as much confidence in Jameis Winston as we're kind of led to believe. But again, if that were the case, I think they would have drafted a Kyle Trask with their 1st round draft pick or in the 2nd round if they really felt that way. I don't think they think Ian Book is a better quarterback than Kyle Trask. And let's run down the rest of the list.
Rumors of them trying to get up to 10.
Yeah, maybe.
Because the rumors came out, and I think what was the rumor that they wanted to give this year's first, next year's first, and the following. I think that's what was wanted from them, and they didn't want to give up 3 first-round picks, especially if you don't know what quarterbacks are going to be there. Because if you watch Trevor Lawrence, Zach Wilson, Trey Lance, and then maybe Justin Fields goes off the board at 7 or 8, and you're not in love with Mac Jones at 10, then you're kind of stuck with that, which is a big gamble to give 3 first-round picks when you don't know.
Right.
Now, maybe if you know, okay, we can land Justin Fields at 10, I think you can go. I mean, I think the Bears had legitimately 2 of the biggest steals of the draft in their 1st and 2nd round picks trading up to get them.
Yeah.
I mean, I legitimately believe Justin Fields has as much upside as any quarterback in this draft. And he showed it in college. And I don't know how the conversation went. I'm getting off a little bit, but I don't know how the conversation went from him legitimately being in the conversation for the 2nd overall pick right after the college football playoff to the wild draft process that ultimately landed him 11 and the 4th QB off the board. But
rounding out the rest of the Saints picks here, again, the Ian Book thing is crazy to me. Kentucky offensive tackle Landon Young, South Alabama wide receiver Kawan Baker. I gave them a C grade. And again, it's stupid to even give grades out, but just for the sake of the article, we gave out the grades. I think I had the Panthers at A- or a B+, the Falcons at a B, and then gave the Saints a C. Anyway, in the chat, you guys, tell us which team you think had the best draft of the Buccaneers opponents. One thing they didn't address was the offensive line until the 6th round when they took Kentucky offensive tackle Landon Young. And I don't know if that's a good move or not. And I say that, Taylor, because protection is so important in life. And I mean your home.
Oh, wow.
And I mean your automobile.
Nice.
I mean, really in every aspect. You like that? I still got it when
fantastic.
I need to pull out a good segue every once in a while. You like that? And I bring this all up to bring up the point that our good friends, Briar Greaves, that's the place you want to go when you need protection. Don't wait till the hurricanes start. Check your policy now. Make sure you are covered. Do you need flood insurance? Are you in a flood zone? Do you have a rental property? People get so much misinformation. Okay, I'm renting a place. Certainly the building and the owner that I'm renting from has insurance. That's true, but it doesn't cover your contents. It just covers the structure. You need to protect what's inside your home.
Oh, 100%.
Exactly. Even if it's $100, 15 minutes, hell yeah, I'm going to do that. Give Briar Greaves a call, 813-876-4166, 813-876-4166. You can go find them online as well, briargreaves.com. There's nobody listening right now that doesn't need some sort of insurance that Briar Greaves can give you. One quick thing with homeowners insurance, rates are going through the roof. There's a crisis in the state of Florida right now. If we have some bad storms, there's going to be some companies that just get up and leave. You want to be with Briar Greaves because they're going to find you the best rate, the most reputable, and the highest rated insurance company to protect your property. Give them a call, 813-876-4166. I don't know why I still have the Saints draft guys up here when I was doing Briar Greaves. I should have had me and you up there because we're much better looking than Peyton Turner. So I'm going to switch that back to us if I can remember how to do that. Listen, I'm just saying, look, I'm not John or Scott. I mean, they do this thing like 15 times a week. You know, every once in a while they throw me behind the wheel. So I'm driving today and trying to do all the graphics and things like that. So I don't think I've made any major errors today. I was able to get Briar Greaves up. I guess I should pull that banner down now. And let's spend the last few minutes of the show talking about Kyle Trask because he tends to be right now kind of a hot topic in the chats thing right now. I see people arguing about Kyle Trask.
They've been arguing since 5 minutes into the pod, and that's exactly what I said prior. It's just such a hot button issue.
Yeah. I remember back in the old days of radio when I worked at 98.7 The Fan, and I would do these 10 p.m. to 2 a.m. shifts, and we were a new station, and a lot of people didn't know about us, and sometimes we would go lots of minutes without calls. There was always something we could take out of our back pocket at the time back then, Taylor. All I had to do was mention Tim Tebow. Phone lines would light up with the 7 people that were listening. By God, they were going to call. Kyle Trask, he's not quite Tim Tebow polarizing, but certainly among Buccaneer fans, there's a lot of question marks. And I've found very few people, Taylor, who are neutral about it. They either love the pick or they hate the pick. And I was one of those guys that really liked the pick. Not in the first round, but I thought in the second round. And the reason I say that is you've got to start looking at the quarterback position. And people say, well, he's not even going to see the field for 2 years. He's only going to have 2 years to play when Brady retires. If Brady goes 2 years, we don't know for sure Brady's going to play 2 years. I could see, I don't think it's going to happen, but it wouldn't be out of the realm of possibility if the Buccaneers were to repeat and win a Super Bowl that Brady decides to hang it up. We know Giselle wants him to. She wanted him to last year. Make no mistake, the wives have a lot of influence over these guys. But what I'm trying to say, not joking around, is we don't know what's going to happen with him. Maybe it is 2 years. Maybe he decides to play 3 years. Maybe Kyle Trask, never sees the field as a Buccaneer. But maybe he does. It's time, in my opinion, to start thinking about the future and life after Tom Brady. And I think that, in my opinion, Kyle Trask is a guy that reminds me a little bit of Brady as a guy that's not the most athletic guy in the world, but is tough, is accurate. I mean, Brady didn't come out of Michigan as a guy known for having a cannon for an arm. He was a guy that had to sit behind some other guys before he had his opportunity. So there's a lot of similarities, I think, between he and Kyle Trask. Now, I'm certainly not ready to crown Kyle Trask as a future Hall of Famer. I'm not even saying he's going to be a good NFL starter yet. I am going to say that Byron Leftwich and Clyde Christensen were at his pro day. I'm also going to say that Jason Light and Bruce Arians watched a ton of film on this guy. And so I'm going to go with their evaluation on this, in my opinion. And I think that they've got a plan for Kyle Trask. I don't know what it is or what it's going to be or how it's going to pan out, but they shot their shot and they drafted a quarterback. And that's something that a lot of people have been saying the Buccaneers need to do. Even going back to before Jameis Winston and then even with Jameis Winston, they've got their guy, or they hope they have their guy for the future. Now, you wrote an article criticizing it, saying it was probably the worst move in franchise history. Care to explain yourself about that article there, Taylor?
This will go down as Bo Jackson and Roberto Aguayo. I'm just kidding.
Ouch! No, I'm just kidding. Say things like that.
I'm just kidding.
Don't you ever bring up Bo Jackson when I'm on the podcast again. Roberto Aguayo's bad enough, but never bring up Bo Jackson again, please.
I am completely kidding. I am being a little overzealous with that, but I did write an article, was QB Trask a wasted pick for the Bucs? And I feel like the initial reply, because people love to read the headlines and not look in there and see that I gave Kyle Trask a lot of credit, I didn't say that it was a bad pick, and I didn't say that he was a bad player. He is a guy that I just don't think makes a lot of sense for the Bucs. Now, I think that Kyle Trask is a good enough player to probably go and be to ultimately turn into a decent starter in this league. He probably could have gone places this year where he would have competed for a starting job. Now, as far as his future, you really can't ask for a better landing spot than the Bucs. Why? When he was at Florida and he found a ton of success, what did he do that with? An extremely talented supporting cast. He had Kadarius Toney, he had Kyle Pitts, he had a really good offensive mind there in Dan Mullen, and that's a lot of what he's getting with the Bucs. When you step into the Bucs locker room, that has, I don't know if they'll still be there when he is potentially the starter if that happens, Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, Antonio Brown, Scotty Miller. You've got a ton of offensive brilliance on the coaching staff. That's a great spot for him to land. Not one where he can presumably start quickly like he may have done at some teams, but it's a good place for him to develop and probably where you're going to get the most out of Kyle Trask and what he offers. If you're going to find a place for Kyle Trask to be the best quarterback that Kyle Trask can be at the NFL level, it's probably in Tampa. The one of among the places. And he did have an incredible year. I think, 46 or 48 total touchdowns last year, 7 or 8 interceptions, over 4,200 yards. An unbelievable year last year and a pretty good year. I think 25 and 8, 2,700 yards, taking over for Felipe Franks in 2019. That's great. He took a Joe Burrow-esque leap in 2020 and shot up draft boards. That's great. And he is, I think, he can process the game really well. I think he can throw the ball well to all 3 levels of the field, even though he doesn't have that zip on his passes that you might want. Those are the good things. I think by all accounts, he's a good dude. He's a good leader. Props to him for sticking it out at Florida and competing for that starting job, getting it, running away with it, and putting together a legitimate Heisman caliber campaign in 2020. I think in a lot of years, he's probably the Heisman winner with the season he had last year. I think he's a really good quarterback who can turn into a decent to good NFL starter. Now that I've gotten that out of the way for the Bucs fans who like him, for the Gator fans who are in the chat, that I let you know I don't think Kyle Trask is a bad prospect or a bad player. Here is the other side of my argument. Does Kyle Trask have the high-end traits? What is he lacking? He's lacking the zip in his arm strength. He's lacking mobility inside and outside of the pocket, and he's lacking the ability to create outside of structure. And I think those are 3 very important things that separate good quarterbacks from great quarterbacks. Now, I know the first argument that everyone wants to make, and made with me a million times after that article was posted, was Peyton Manning and Tom Brady and Drew Brees, those aren't mobile guys. Those aren't guys who are known for their ability to create outside of structure. But if you draft a quarterback that doesn't possess that ability to create outside of structure and doesn't possess high-end traits and doesn't possess an elite arm, you are gambling on him being Peyton Manning, Drew Brees, or Tom Brady, and not gambling on him being Jimmy Garoppolo or Jared Goff or Kirk Cousins, or just another good quarterback who won't leave this team in 2 years, much like the 49ers are now, going, we've got a team that's prepared to win, but a quarterback who just isn't good enough, and we want to upgrade. And that's the position that I fear the Bucs will find themselves in with Kyle Trask. Not to say he can't be good, but is he going to be the ideal quarterback? Is he going to be the high-end talent that you want leading a team that's ready to win in a year or 2 years when Tom Brady's ultimately out the door, when maybe some of that coaching staff is out the door? Is he the guy that you want leading that franchise? And I just think that there's that.
But you don't know. That's just the thing is. I mean, obviously,
I understand.
But obviously, Jason Light and Bruce Arians and thinks he can be that guy,
and that's fine. They can have that opinion on him, and if they truly believe, again, like I said, that article could be on freezing cold takes in 3 years if he turns out fantastic. But I'm not sure that Kyle Trask has the upside to be what Carson Palmer was in Arizona. I'm not sure he has the upside to be Tom Brady, or I just don't know if it's more likely. I think it's this is another guy that lacks experience. He wasn't the starter in high school. He only took 160 throws in high school because he was the backup to Derek King. He only started for 2 years in Florida, and I mean, honestly, he wouldn't be here if Felipe Franks didn't break his ankle in 2019. So he lacks experience, and despite all of the good that he showed and all the good that he has, I just have questions. And with so many positions, you're going to have Carlton Davis up for whose contract is up next year. And they're probably going to push to re-sign him. But after that, you got Sean Murphy-Bunting and Jamel Dean following that. You need depth at cornerback. And when you look at, okay, so let's say Trask doesn't pan out. It's the 64th pick. It's barely even a second-round pick. You got Carlton Davis at 63 3 years ago. You got Jamel Dean in the 3rd round. You've gotten Jordan Whitehead in the 4th round. You've gotten a lot of talent in those rounds since Jason Light's been here. And that is a spot. And that's why I say Kyle Trask may be the future quarterback, and he may be talented, but this is a team that wants to win right now and wants to maximize that window that they've got Tom Brady, which may very well be 2 years. And so I just think that there are positions that could have impacted this team quicker, that could have been very important depth pieces, and you could have been looking at high upside athletes at a lot of different positions.
All right. Now let me argue with this. I've given you your time.
Go ahead.
Let me counter that with, okay, great. You've got a great cornerback because you drafted one in the 2nd round and he takes over for Carlton Davis, who ends up leaving in free agency. Or you draft another offensive lineman. Great. You've got great protection. But for who? Who's going to lead your team? You've got to have a quarterback. You've got to have a guy under center. What are you going to do about the guy under center? They see this guy as a guy that can win with a good surrounding cast. I don't think the Buccaneers are expecting him to take this team on their back. We saw what he did at Florida. He had an excellent surrounding cast. But the bottom line is you can have all the depth you want at cornerback in the world, Taylor. You can have all the great offensive linemen in the world. You've still got to have a guy to run point. You got to have your point guy.
That's my main argument is I don't know if he's ever going to be the guy. Now, the Bucs clearly do. They drafted him, and that's fine.
Did you think Jameis Winston was going to be that guy? Please tell the jury, yes or no. Did you think when he was drafted, was Jameis Winston going to be that guy? Yes or no?
Really, really bad Bucs team. Number 1 overall. I
think
he had a better chance. I thought Jameis Winston had a better chance of being that guy than Kyle Trask does.
And he didn't.
Now,
did you think Tom Brady was going to be that guy when he was drafted?
I was 6.
Well, that's my point.
I was 4.
I mean, the bottom line is you don't know, right? You don't know. We don't know. Everybody talks about how weak his arm is. Okay, he doesn't have a cannon for an arm, but how many guys can throw the ball 80 yards? But, geez, if you can't hit the broadside of a barn or you throw it to the wrong guy, it doesn't matter. I mean, Bruce Arians said it himself. He can make every throw that we ask him to do. Now, John Boobin, if I'm saying that right, makes a great point. That's great. But is his coaching staff even still going to be here? Byron Leftwich isn't going to be here. If the Buccaneers get to the Super Bowl again next year, Byron Leftwich is going to be a head coach. Todd Bowles is going to be a head coach. Bruce Arians rides off into the sunset. Tom Brady might ride off into the sunset. So then you might have a guy who's not the fit for the next head coach. There's no doubt about that. That's a question mark. But you can't draft thinking, well, what if this? You've got to think to yourself right now, this is a guy, we're going to have a quarterback in the future. And this is a guy that's going to be able to learn from the greatest quarterback that's ever played the position. Now, does that mean he's going to pan out? Hell no. I don't have any idea. I thought Jameis Winston was going to be a fantastic quarterback. All right. I thought there've been I thought Ryan Leaf was going to be a great quarterback. I thought Peyton Manning, there's no way when he left the Colts was going to go win a Super Bowl, and yet he still does that. I mean, who knows? I don't know if Bruce Arians.
Do you think Kyle Trask has what it takes to be a great quarterback? Not a good one, not a good enough one, a great one. And I think that
you don't have to have a great quarterback to win a Super Bowl. Brad Johnson won a Super Bowl.
It's much harder in today's league to do that.
It's much harder. All right, but
it's much harder than it was in 02.
The 49ers almost won. The 49ers almost won a Super Bowl a couple of years ago with an average quarterback, right?
And that's a valid point. And
Joe Flacco won a Super Bowl. He was an average quarterback.
It.
I mean, there's been plenty of average quarterbacks, plenty of great quarterbacks.
Joe Flacco did go on
never won a Super Bowl. Dan Marino never won a Super Bowl. Drew Brees has won one. And he's regarded as the second greatest one that ever played. It's 22 guys. It's 11 on offense, 11 on defense. You got to surround them. No, is he going to be a Patrick Mahomes? Of course not. I think, we can't judge second-round draft picks on what they're going to be. Maybe comparing them to a guy like Patrick Mahomes or Brett Favre, which, by the way, Brett Favre only has one Super Bowl win as well. Again, statistically, one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time. So, anyway, it's a fun debate, Taylor. We've had fun.
It is.
The chat's going crazy. Nobody knows. Nobody's right or wrong. We'll find out in a couple years, 3 or 4 years, if they made a wise decision, or maybe this is another bad second round pick for the Buccaneers. But you know what? Even if it is, they've survived Austin Seferian-Jenkins. Yep. They survived MJ Stewart. They've survived Roberto Aguayo.
Even though some of the fans didn't.
Yeah. I mean, they survived. I mean, you make mistakes, and everybody's going to hit. Yeah. You said it. It's 50%. You're a hell of a GM. You're going to the Hall of Fame as a GM if you nail 50% of your picks. Taylor, man, I really appreciate you joining us. Appreciate everybody in the chat. We certainly appreciate our good friends over at Celsius. Make sure to click on the ads on pewterreport.com. You can find out where you can order and buy Celsius directly. You can go to Amazon, places like that. It's local stores and grocery stores around here. Convenience stores have Celsius, a great product. And, of course, our good friends at Broad Greaves as well. Yeah, we really need you guys to support our sponsors. They are the bread and butter. They are the ones that keep the lights on. They're the ones that help us get nice new cameras. So Scott and John look tremendous on the latest Buccaneer video draftcast that we did last weekend. They keep us all paid, food on the table, shoes on our kids' feet, all of those things. So make sure you support them. Even if you don't need them, if you stop by the restaurant, if you stop by the insurance office, if you give them a call, hit them up on social media and thank them for doing that. That goes a long way. We certainly appreciate it. For everybody at Pewter Report, for Scott, for John, for Matt, for Taylor, I'm Mark Cook saying we will see you tomorrow afternoon with another edition of the Pewter Report podcast.
Out.